I lived in Milan for several years, and although I knew the city had been bombed in the Second World War, I never gave much thought to who, how and why. In fact, the bombing of Italy by the Allies, and in particular the British, is often overlooked, with much more attention being given to the raids on Germany and the destruction of cities such as Dresden. Italy was first bombed within 24 hours of Mussolini's declaration of war in June 1940, with the planes of RAF Bomber Command flying from England. Milan was first struck a few days later. In 1940, the attacks were largely carried out during the day, when they could be more accurately targeted on factories such as the Pirelli and Innocenti plants on the edge of the city. There were no bombings in 1941, but in autumn 1942, Bomber Command changed its approach. Instead of precision targeting during daylight raids, the decision was taken to attack Italian civilians and morale. Italy was seen as the weak underbelly of the Axis powers and the Italians most vulnerable to pressure. Arthur Harris of Bomber Command, widely known as Bomber or Butcher Harris to his friends, set the Duomo of Milan in the city centre as the aiming point, and although it was hit, it survived relatively unscathed. La Scala, in contrast, was gutted, and La Galleria Vittorio Emanuele was badly damaged. Mercifully, incendiary bombs were less effective on Italian cities than they had been in Germany, perhaps because of wider streets or fewer wooden buildings. By August 1943, most of Milan's historic buildings had been damaged, including the basilicas of Sant'Ambrogio and San Lorenzo. Santa Maria delle Grazie, home of Leonardo's Last Supper, was almost destroyed, but the famous fresco, which obviously couldn't be moved like a painting on canvas, was protected by sandbags and survived. At this point, the British stopped the bombings as they felt they'd achieved the effect on morale that they wanted, and feared that continuing would be counterproductive and strengthen Italian resolve. They were probably right, and Mussolini was deposed shortly after, and the armistice followed in September 1943. Milan was not bombed again until spring 1944, when the Americans and the British were fighting their way northwards, with resistance now being provided by the German occupying forces. This time, Milan was mainly bombed by the US Air Force. In October 1944, at the Francesco Crispi School in the Gorla district of Milan, many children, teachers and caretakers were in the school stairwell, hurrying to the underground shelter as the warning siren sounded. A bomb hit that part of the building, killing 184 children. This is the monument to the tragic event. On the 75th anniversary of the bombing in 2019, the Mayor of Milan asked the USA to apologise. "I think it's necessary that the American government apologises, knowing that we are here to forgive," said the Mayor. By the end of the war, around 2,200 civilians were killed, and about one-third of all buildings in Milan were damaged or destroyed. Some of the cleared debris was taken to the San Siro area and forms Monte Stella, which is about 50 metres high. I am sure the real number of casualties was much greater, given the scale of the destruction. I wonder what effect the aerial bombings had on Italy. One Milanese local told a researcher that when they arrived after the liberation, they did not send in the British, they sent the Americans. This was because people did not hate them as much as people hated the British. The effect on the Italian people is probably best summed up by the urban myth known as Pippo, a mysterious lone plane or pilot said to fly at night looking for targets and whose buzzing sound could be heard when trying to sleep, and has been described as a collective hallucination. You see the effects of the bombing by the much higher proportion of modern buildings in the city centre. In Milan, the modernity of the buildings around Corso Vittorio Emanuele and Santa Babila is striking, especially compared with other historic city centres in Italy. Other buildings were reconstructed and are perhaps less jarring, such as the modern La Rinascente department store, literally next to the Duomo. As for the effect of the bombings on Italy today, I would say that Italy has moved on, and although not forgotten, they do not have the same impact on the people as the Blitz in the Second World War still does on the people of the UK. In Italy, it doesn't feel front of mind, and I assume it will fade further as the generations closest to it pass away. Compare this to the UK, where in 1992 a statue was erected in central London to Bomber Harris and unveiled by the Queen's mother, much to the dismay of many, although his supporters claimed his actions had ultimately shortened the war. By the way, he was known in the Royal Air Force as Butcher Harris, not because of the targeting of civilians, but because of his indifference to aircrew casualties. I don't know which is worse. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to subscribe and click the like button, and I'll be doing more videos along similar lines shortly.